Assessments and Audits, Part 2. Let's go ahead and jump right in. The last nugget was over 40 minutes, and I'm not quite sure how long this one's going to be, so I'm not going to waste your time with a pithy little introduction. Let's just dive right in and look at our 4 objectives for this Security Plus domain. We're going to look at monitoring tools. We'll spend some time kind of doing a survey of different tools out there. IDS methodologies, 3 main methodologies for monitoring and intrusion detection, logging procedures, and we'll end up looking at one of the most important monitoring protocols out there, SNMP. Some of this, I'll just let you know, there'll be a little bit of an overlap. We've already hit some of these issues. One thing you'll find out in the Security Plus objectives is that there is some overlap and redundancy between the domains. So we may see some things we've already talked about before, but that's okay. It never hurts to revisit some concepts. Let's talk about some of the monitoring tools that you're going to use for assessment and auditing of systems and different areas of your network. I'm going to go up here now. Wild Packet's AeroPeek is the tool that I use to do wireless analysis and wireless sniffing. I'm not going to go through that in this particular nugget. Again, this is not vendor specific, but remember that free nugget movie on wireless war driving. I show you how I use this tool. You get to see it in real life. I'm going to look at Wild Packet's iNet tools. This is a tool that came with that particular Wild Packet's AeroPeek application. This is a wide variety of tools. You can see I can ping individual hosts. I can set out intervals, the size of bytes, the number of pings, and this is one of those things that can actually cause problems on your network. These are the types of things by setting really large byte sizes and huge number or continuous pings. This would be considered an attack against a network or a system. So if you had an IDS or an IPS, a continuous ping against a particular host, that's going to raise some red flags in the organization. But again, for penetration testing, it's a great tool to do large ping sizes or continuous pings against different hosts and trying to kind of fill up their memory and their processors. So this is one thing to remember. Also under tools, I've got a wide variety of other things. I can do a ping scan, where I can say I want to scan from address 192.168.0.0 all the way from 192.168.255.255 and do a whole huge range of addresses. I can also set byte size and timeouts there as well, so I can scan an entire network. And this is done for reconnaissance. This is done for information gathering, typically in a network as a predecessor to a more structured attack. You can also do this as part of the risk assessment and monitoring process. Also, another auditing tool is to do trace route. This allows me to see the many hops through my network. Type in a host address and I can see the number of hops. I can also go back to this tools menu and do a DNS and name resolution. I can do a name lookup. I can span a particular range of IP addresses for names, name to IP address resolutions. I can do a DNS lookup to an authoritative DNS server or do a recursive search on the internet for DNS. I've also got tools that allow me to port scan. We talked about port scanning earlier. Port scanning can be a tool that can be used against your organization as a precursor to a malicious attack by coming in and starting on particular port numbers and looking for TCP or UDP or both to see what ports are open. If a user knows what ports are open, they know what some of your vulnerabilities are. We also use this in vulnerability assessment and auditing to go into a network and find out what ports do we need to shut down, what unnecessary services are running that we can delete or remove from the network. Port scanning. We can also go in and do service scanning, looking for particular services like Telnet or TFTP, as I type in numbers here, 25, Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, 443, HTTP over SSL. This is HTTP secure. And again, you could also type in other ports that may not be known ports, but ones that are used by, let's say, peer-to-peer file sharing protocols, or ones that are used for known denial of service attacks or other types of attacks. So this is also part of the process, scanning our network to find out if services are being used. Unnecessary services should be removed from every networked device. Again, this is a tool that can be used against us or it can be used for us in assessment and auditing. A couple of other commands that you may not use anymore. Finger, which is a protocol. The finger protocol or name protocols is also known, it's been around since, I don't know, the 70s. And it uses TCP port 79. It can provide information like whether a user is currently logged on, email address information, full information, anything stored in a directory, the files in the user's home directory. This is a really insecure protocol. It's been used by crackers to initiate social engineering attacks. The Morris worm, MORRIS, exploited an overflow vulnerability in the finger program. So most systems, for example, a Cisco router, will automatically disable the finger protocol. Whois can be used to go out on the internet and find information about who owns a domain name. That can also be used in social engineering attacks and others. You can also do throughput scans as well on your organization by putting in parameters like the URL, password information, and find out the throughput to a particular server. So some great tools here, and these are found readily all over the internet, but most of your big management suites are going to have all these tools combined. When I installed AeroPeak, of course, I got a tool, as you can see down here, little icon, iNet tools that I use. So keep this in mind. Something else I'm going to add to my toolkit are some tools to monitor and assess my Windows server. In my case, I got a Windows 2003 server. I opened up an MMC console, and this is a screenshot. For my own security reasons, I'm not going to RDP over to my domain controller, but that's okay. I went over there and made some screenshots of these, and what I did was I opened up an MMC console, just so I went start run MMC, and I just added in these snap-ins, and you can see here I've got my certificate templates, and this shows you all of the templates and the security templates that I have that I can use and load up for certificate services. This goes to a PKI, a public key infrastructure, and a certificate digital signature implementation. We'll talk more about that later on in this Nugget series. I've also got some other tools loaded up here that I'm going to use for monitoring and assessment and logging. I've got my event viewer tool. I've got my Internet Authentication Service, my IAS, which is my Radius server. I've got my IP Security Monitor tool. I can actually watch the process of IKE Phase 1 and IKE Phase 2 and the security associations being set up and data being encrypted and transferred through my virtual private network with IP security. I can view performance logs and alerts. And why do we view performance? Okay, why do we view performance from a security standpoint? Well, again, we create a baseline of performance, and if there's any spike in usage of bandwidth or processor usage or flooding of network interface cards, we may have denial of service attacks, worms, viruses, and the like. So performance sounds like it's just for optimization and getting the most out of your network, but we also use it for security monitoring and assessment as well. Routing and remote access, which I'll use for my dial-in access server. That's part of my security solution as well. I've also got the security configuration analysis tools, security templates, which I can load up. I can load up a Microsoft predefined domain controller security template, which has my security group policy enforcement in it. I also have a wireless monitor as well. So this is a great set of tools that I can use by default for monitoring, for assessment, for auditing my security environment. If I go further down here under the event viewer, I can see I've got my security log, and I can see I've got all my success audits of logons and directory access. We'll look at the security log on my Vista machine too, from a client standpoint, kind of get a live look at that. So I've got all these different logs I can look at. For a performance standpoint, I would look at my application and DS log, DNS server. But from a security standpoint, it's the security and system logs that I'm concerned with. My IP security monitor, which is for IPsec or IPsec VPNs. Here's my domain controller skill serve 1. I've got all my policies for IKE main mode, IKE quick mode, and you can see all these different areas. We can look at IKE policies, statistics, security associations. I don't have any VPN set up right now, but this is a great way to come in and monitor and evaluate your VPN IPsec implementation. We'll talk more about that later on as well. Here's my performance logs and alerts where I can go in and create a new log. By default, the counters are memory pages per second. We're looking at some physical disk and percent processor time. Those are your three kind of baseline utilization and performance monitors. But we can go in even farther from a security standpoint and say on this domain controller, which I'm using with an IPsec solution, I can actually view the IPsec version 4 IKE, or the key exchange that happens early on in the VPN process. So I can actually go in here and get individual metrics for security issues. And again, a sudden spike in memory utilization or network interface utilization or processor utilization could also lead to the conclusion that I have some type of flooding attack on my network, maybe a worm or a virus as well. And then finally here I can see my security templates, and I've got a security template for my secure domain controller. So I can apply multiple templates, for example DC security and secure DC, and you can see things I have here like account policies. We've talked about this, but I've got individual granular password policies, account lockout policies, and Kerberos policies for this domain controller. I can also go in here and see local machine policies, groups that are restricted, registry information, files, all stuff that relates to security as it's locked down with this particular security policy template. And you can see down here also I've got the wireless monitor. So this is just a nice toolkit of tools that I can use on a network operating system domain controller like Windows Server 2003. I can also monitor on this client system, this Vista machine, by going to my settings control panel. And I'm going to go to the administrative tools area, and I've got my event viewer. The event viewer, as we can see, has the ability to see all different types of information. We can look at a wide variety of logs. It's reading it right now, and the log I'm most really interested in, let me go ahead and maximize this, would be my security log. And you can look first of all at admin events, and you can break down, error messages, all your different error messages here, all your warning messages. Okay, so obviously critical errors are the most important. Then I've got my warning errors, and then I've got my informational errors, and this goes into monitoring and auditing of my system. The more things I turn on for auditing, the more things are going to be showing up here in this particular event viewer. You can see audit success, for example, and again, a lot of this is just successful logging on to the system. I've got Windows logs over here. You can see here's my security log. Load that up, and you can see there's a lot of success audit entries. As I move up here and select a particular granular one, shows up down here general information about that logon, audit success, the computer, the event ID, the source. I can get more detailed information about that as well. XML format, which is a great way to publish this information. A great way to view the results of logs is to use XML. So this is my security log. So my system log and my security log on my Vista machine would also be the two main areas I'm going to look at for monitoring and logging as part of an auditing process and a vulnerability assessment process as well. Let's go back and take a look at some other tools here in my administrative tools. Now, local security policy, we've already visited this before, but remember I've got a local security policy on this machine that could be dictated and pushed to me through group policy. But again, this is all part of your auditing process, coming in and auditing your account policies, okay, the password policies that you have on your machine, all right, the account lockout policies that have been applied. Public key policy. This relates to EFS in this particular situation, and you've got also any IP security policies that may be installed on this local computer as part of an overall IPsec implementation. So that's an area that I can look at, a local security policy as well, kind of backing my way out of here. Another tool to look at is the reliability and performance monitor. That's a great tool to look at as well. This is going to bring up kind of a beefy system monitor where I can see CPU, disk, network, and memory utilization. I can also do a reliability monitor, which is going to show reliability and availability of software, application, hardware, Windows failures, and miscellaneous failures. Okay, so this is a nice little tool as well to do system assessment, part of the hardening process of this Vista machine as well. And then finally, I've got the Windows Firewall with Advanced Security. This is another tool I can use as part of my assessment. I can go in here and scroll down and say, I want to look at monitoring, current policy information. And I can come in here and I can see information about my domain profile, my public profile, my firewall state. I can even come down and view the firewall rules that are applied, connection security rules, security associations. You can see where the logging, where the file name is for this particular log. The firewall log is on this machine. I can go right to that by clicking on that firewall log. And I haven't created it yet, of course, but this log would be empty because I'm using a different tool besides Windows Firewall right now. So it's not being protected by this particular system that's built into Vista. But again, another key area for security monitoring on your end user system, Windows Vista being a good example. Now we've talked about intrusion detection systems and intrusion prevention systems as kind of reactive systems for threat mitigation, but they can also be used for monitoring and risk assessment. So we want to look at three different types of methodologies here. The first is a signature-based monitoring or detection system. This is when you're going to compare the traffic that you sniff or that you capture to an existing signature, a set of rules that is basically pertaining to typical intrusion activity. There are many skilled network engineers and security engineers out there that are daily researching known attacks, known vulnerabilities, and developing signatures and posting those up on the global internet. The experts at Cisco, among many others. These signatures can be then used in IDS and monitoring systems to detect attacks and vulnerabilities. A signature-based IDS or IPS is going to monitor the network traffic and compare the data in the flow against a database of known attack signatures. It's also known as misuse detection or pattern matching, and it's simple to customize and it's extensible. A second type of monitoring or detection is called anomaly-based. This is when you monitor the network for events and for data that represents an anomaly, a departure from normal behavior. And that's why it's so important to use existing monitoring tools that I've showed you so far to create a baseline of normal activity, to run that on a daily or weekly basis and log all the information and generate reports so you know what the normal, secure baseline is. Then, when you deviate from those norms or from those baselines, those can trigger an anomalous situation. An anomaly could be an unusual increase in a certain type of traffic. It could be an occurrence of some type of traffic that's not typically monitored on your network. Or it could be malformed messages or malformed packets of a known protocol. Now, statistical anomaly detection is going to learn about the profile of your monitored network, like the traffic patterns from the network, over a period of days or weeks. After that period is done, then you can detect if statistical properties of the network traffic are deviating enough from the unusual pattern to trigger an alarm. A non-statistical approach, I'll just put non-stat, has a predefined definition of known good behavior, typically generated by the vendor, depending upon what network operating system you're using, what network devices you're using, what type of applications you're running. So it would know if there were things like routing protocols originating from an end-user workstation, or a TCP packet where the source and destination address and ports are equal, or perhaps IPX traffic in a network where only TCP/IP traffic is used. In a wireless environment, it could be used to find a rogue device, like a rogue DHCP server. A policy-based or behavior-based monitoring or detection system is going to trigger if there's a violation of policy or configured behavior. This is a very popular method of monitoring and detection, but the policy-based monitoring system has to have a clear view of what the security policy is, or what the expected behavior of the system or the network is supposed to be. Behavior-based or policy-based, since there's so much configuration that goes into it, they're typically very reliable and focused. They're typically very easy to create your own custom signatures, for example using XML, and the XML signatures can be based on your own security policy and customized to your network environment and your applications. The network engineer or the network operator, however, has to design the policy rule set from scratch, from the ground up. Okay, these are the three types of detection and monitoring methodologies: signature-based, anomaly-based, behavior-based. Know them for your Security Plus exam. Now our next topic is logging, and we've already touched on logging from many different angles. We know that when we use monitoring tools, we can take that data that we're monitoring and we can send it to some type of report, some type of log. Several tools that are built into Vista, for example, have the ability to create logs and reports. We know that we can go look at log entries in the event viewer, the application log, the system log, the security log, all based on applications that we've installed on our system. If we're using IPsec, for example, then you're going to have an IPsec log on the client and the server. But many times, networking devices, for example, will take all of the information and send it to a third-party server known as a syslog server, SYSLOG, and syslog is a very popular protocol. What you can see here is the actual results of a syslog, and you can see that you've got a date and time stamp here. This is from an actual PIX firewall device, and you can see the actual entries, the log entries of what are happening as we go through your denying ICMP and TCP, tearing down UDP connections, building and tearing down UDP connections. So you can also see addressing information, okay, the flags that are being used that are turned on, SYNAC, and on and on. So these are the kind of logs that are generated. Now, having to go through and mull through syslog logs on a syslog server, and by the way, you can get one of these for free. Kiwi, Kiwi, has a free syslog server that you can install, and you just basically configure your routers and your servers and your network devices to say, I'm just going to point to this IP address of this syslog server, and it does it on its own. Now, there is some configuration. We can filter out a lot of this information by simply saying, you know what, we only want to log the critical information. We only want to log the debugging information. And when you do debug, or you do look for problems in code and application configuration, that can be sent to your syslog servers as well. So logging is a proactive process. There are also tools in place that I can use to go run filters, so that I can run filters on this information and I can extract certain information. So if I only want to see certain types of protocols from certain IP addresses, or certain types of services to certain types of addresses, I can also filter that out as well. Plenty of tools to do that. But understand that auditing will be a process where somebody comes in after the fact and is going to go through with a fine-tooth comb your logs, your syslog entries. And this is often done as a part of incident response. Yes, we're going to do it to evaluate security. Yes, we're going to do it as a risk assessment process and a vulnerability assessment process. But this will also be information available in the incident response process to help us isolate where the security hole is and where is the source of the attack. So syslog is a very popular method. Now, there's another protocol out there, and you might want to jot this down if you have your pen handy, and it's called SDEE. SDEE, I'm going to go ahead and jot it down right here next to logging procedures. You may or may not need to know this for the Security Plus exam, okay? It's a new standard proposed by the ICSA. And the ICSA, I want to check out their website, is the International Computer Security Association. They have their own ICSA labs. You may want to go and add that to your favorites, really focused on certifying antivirus software. And they've got a protocol that they're really trying to push called SDEE, which is a secure standard to replace syslog, which I just showed you the output of it to a syslog server there in the previous screen. It defines the format of messages, and it's a protocol to be used to communicate events between security devices. For example, the Cisco IPS sensor in their version 5.0 replaced what they were using, which was RDEP, with this new SDEE. It hasn't really taken off and taken on a lot of different vendors, but you may see more about that in the future, and there may be a little question about that in relationship to syslog. It's kind of a security syslog, if you want to look at it that way. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about in this part 2 of assessments and audits is a very important protocol that's still used by lots of vendors and lots of solutions throughout the organization, throughout the world. And it's called Simple Network Management Protocol, and we simply must talk about this if we're going to talk about assessing and auditing our network and security environment. For years, Simple Network Management Protocol has been a big player in the Internet Protocol suite. It consists of a set of standards for managing your network. It's got an application layer protocol. It has its own database schema and a set of data objects to manage networking devices. It basically exposes the management data on managed systems in the form of variables, and that describes the overall configuration. Then you can do basically all kinds of stuff with that information. So you've got several systems that you're going to manage, and these systems can be servers, they can be routers, they can be switches, they can be hubs, they can be VPN concentrators, they can be all types of devices. Almost anything is going to support SNMP. So you've got a number of systems to be managed, and then you've got one or more systems, I'm going to put these here, managing in them. Software components called agents are installed on these managed systems, and they report back, they send information back to the managing stations or the management station via the SNMP protocol. Now the problem is, from a security standpoint, is because these agents expose tons of management data, like system information, the name, processes that are running, routing information, and more. That creates a security problem, because if you have this information going across the wire or a wireless environment to these management stations, or if the traffic is in band, in other words, it's in the same flow of traffic as your production traffic, that creates a huge security issue. So where SNMP can also be used to help us improve our security and improve our assessment and auditing of our organization, it also provides a security hole because it's a weak protocol. It relies on these passwords called community strings. And these community strings can be read-only and they can be read-write, and they're sent in clear. They're sent in the clear text. So if I can extract a read-write community string or a password, I can actually make changes on these systems as well as actually find out vital information about these systems. Now, what we're seeing is the SNMP version 3 emerging. SNMP version 3 is the current standard of SNMP as of 2004. So it's been around for several years now. If you're using an earlier version, let's say version 1 or one of the many flavors of version 2, according to the IETF, or the group that's responsible for SNMP, according to them, you're using an obsolete or historical version. As a matter of fact, you're using an insecure version, because SNMP version 3 offers 3 very important services that we're aware of. It provides authentication, and we know all about authentication. It offers privacy. In other words, we can encrypt the traffic between the agents running on these particular devices and the managing stations. It can be encrypted with triple DES or AES, or even DES if you want to. encryption algorithms, and it provides access control mechanisms, which is very important. So as powerful as a tool and as prevalent as a tool that SNMP is for monitoring and auditing, it also has to be combined with the newest, most upgraded standard, SNMP version 3, to provide the security we need because of that vital information that's being transferred between the agents and the management stations, which are storing this in a database schema. All right. Well, congratulations on finishing the assessments and auditing domain. In this domain, we had 2 different nuggets. In part 2 here, we looked at monitoring tools, got a nice little survey, a little inventory, talked about the 3 main IDS methodologies, talked some more about logging, and then finally ended up with a discussion on simple network management protocol. Hopefully you're using version 3. I hope this CBT nugget has been informative for you. I want to thank you for viewing. We'll see you in the next domain.